Well, welcome everyone to this week's Menlo Midweek podcast. My name is Mark.
And I'm Phil.
And this is the conclusion of a couple chapters. One of them being Love Is, and another being, this is my final podcast,
One
Phil.
is Love Is, one is Mark Is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mark was.
Oh,
Mark will be?
That makes me sad.
I don't know. Yeah.
Mark will be. That's good. I like that.
I like that too.
Mark will be sounds like it might just be your last name, too.
It could be my last name. It could also be like my sophomore album.
Oh, yeah, that's good. I like it.
Yeah.
That's kind of like what you're doing. It's like your sophomore
bit.
album.
Yeah.
I like it.
Nice. Well, Phil, you didn't shy away from giving us all a really fun talk this past weekend, which I'm super grateful for.
Sure.
Hey, there's like a non-zero chance that as we're recording this, all of Menlo Park loses power. So we just want to throw that out there as well.
Yeah. If this podcast ends abruptly, it is because God said that he wasn't going to cause a world devastating event by another global flood, but like, don't tell Menlo Park right now because it is wild.
It's pretty
I'm
crazy.
not sure. This level of rain is like what it was when we first moved here at the end of whatever it was, 22 or something. And it was torrential, like just flooding in the streets, crazy stuff. So that's what it is right now out there. Pretty wild.
So hopefully we can have a nice ending to this.
Yeah.
But in case we just cut it off, we're sorry, but
Yeah.
you're getting this so far.
That's good. Yeah. Awesome, man.
Well, Phil, let's dive into your message a bit, and then I think we'll just kind of chat around things with my transition as well. But,
Sounds great.
So we're concluding our Love Is series where we've looked at 3 weeks over what love is, what it isn't, ways in which our culture is telling us this is the most important things about love or relationships, and this week was sex. And so I love that you started with a joke that we're locking the doors and talking about sex, but the joke was we actually are talking about sex. We just didn't lock the doors. So that was a great way to just pull everyone in with you.
Yeah. I mean, I think, I've done talks like this. I don't do them every week or anything, but we do talks like this semi-regularly. When we started having conversations like this, certainly when we did like the Wonderfully Made series a couple years ago, I think for a lot of people that this had just been a space of lots of ambiguity, kind of like everybody does what's right in their own eyes. Love is whatever you want it to be. It was very jarring. I think that for most people at Menlo now, they know like, hey, if Phil talks about it, this is kind of where he's going to come from. This is the way we understand the scriptures to communicate it. We want to be a place that has clarity, but also like a profound amount of grace, recognizing that we all fall short of the sexual ethic of Jesus. None of us face no temptation.
Right.
We all on some level are, looking up from the foot of the cross saying, Jesus, there are things that I want to do that I know are not good for me. There are things that I don't want to do that I know are good for me. And I live in a culture of expressive individualism that says if I just experience my sexuality in unfiltered ways through consent with adults, that's enough and I'll feel better. And so to be able to point back over and over and over again and say, actually, that's not the biblical vision for sexuality, not because God doesn't love us, not because God's trying to be a killjoy, but because the underlying worldview of what it means to follow Jesus is an entire way of life. And this certainly is in the heart of that. And, I gave a framing of sort of the culture talking about sex as a game, and that's a little bit of a pivot from the way I've talked about it in the past. And what church has sometimes done where we talk about it as gross, really as this reactionary swing, but still pushing back against the same heretical view while also embracing aspects of it. And then the biblical vision of sex as a gift from God in the covenant of marriage between one man and one woman with God at the center for a lifetime. And so understanding it's a powerful gift, therefore it needs parameters, but it's something to be enjoyed. And so hopefully it gave people not just like a biblical vision for sexuality, but also a little bit of a filter within which as they interact with whether it's culture or like purity culture or their own shame and guilt if they grew up in church to go, hey, where does this come from? Like, what are these messages about this thing that oftentimes in church we don't feel like we're allowed to talk about?
And as sex as a game, from talking with you before, that was a pivot from sex is God. And so what caused you to pivot from the framework that you used in the past to what you set up this past weekend?
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the things that's happened in a highly permissive culture where we've also kind of gamified
Everything
everything.
is gamified. Yep.
I think that a couple things happened. One, hookup apps like Tinder. If you look at none of this, by the way, is the kingdom of heaven. Like none of it's perfect. But if we roll the clock back 70 years in America, and we look at like what divorce rates were, and we look at the stability of marriage and family, it's a very different picture. Now, those were not perfect marriages. They needed Jesus too. There was lots of guilt and shame that kept people in very destructive relationships. But at a big, high sociological level, we have watched no fault divorce get injected into marriage in America that made the idea of covenant a little looser. And then we watched really the idea of the sexual revolution create this idea in which your expressive individualism becomes paramount. Then we watched cohabitation outside of marriage become very normal. And then we watched hookup culture get injected into that. And then here in Silicon Valley, we brought digitization to all of that. And so you just watched the commitment level get lower and lower and lower and lower and lower. And so as I was kind of preparing for this time, I was like, man, I just feel like in this moment, and then you added to it the fact that over the course of the pandemic, people became even less comfortable with in-person relationships. And I mean, I think we just watched the access, affordability, and anonymity of pornography become ubiquitous. And the internet age has just accelerated that to a level. You add AI to that. So the idea of like, okay, sexuality was meant to exist as a gift within a flourishing marriage, within a covenant. That's what God made it. And just like over and over and over and over again, it's like, what if we removed every potential boundary? And now I think people, they're not even necessarily, what we're seeing actually is the statistics are telling us people are having less sex. That like Gen Alpha, Gen Z is having less sex. And a lot of it is because they had screen-based childhoods. And they prepared them for screen-based adulthoods. And the like social development of how do you form meaningful relationships? How do you do the difficult work of enduring in a relationship when things get messy? Like no one has equipped them for that stuff. And so I think just being able to regularly flag and say, man, like this is so good. God made this for you. It's like it's worth all the work. It's worth all the investment. There's something so powerful and profound about it. My favorite book on this is from Tim Keller, The Meaning of Marriage. If you haven't read it, it's fantastic. But I think just trying to circle back to culture has made this into something where you get kind of a high score, you take it, you leave it. There's different genres. You get what you want from it. It's entirely self-focused. And to me, that's no longer even a false god. If anything, you have become your own god. Your individual, instantaneous experience that's self-focused has become the current focus of sex in our culture.
And then in combat with the cultural push of what sex is and what it is becoming, there's then the church trying to play catch up or trying to insert their way of, hey, how can we help the best?
Totally.
And you mentioned a bit about purity culture. You mentioned some ways in which that hit the mark, missed the mark, heart behind that. So why was church's reaction to that sex is gross? And what do you think? Yeah, how can that be reframed as sex as a gift?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the culture at the time the church culture at the time was looking at the broader culture and just saying, whoa, like it's going so fast, we're not entirely sure what to do. And you had like the religious right politically sort of like getting wrapped up in that, which is almost hilarious now that there was a political party in America that said we're going to be morally upstanding, because I would just argue that's no political structure in America at this point. That to my personal grief and lament, actually. But I think that the church at the time reflected some of that and was like, the way I framed it this weekend was when church saw culture saying yes to everything, the response became no to everything. Right. And I think, if you are a parent, you've probably had your kid at some point ask you 1,000 questions. Can I do this? Can I do this? Can I do this? And at a certain point, you feel so overwhelmed. You're like, no, you can't do anything, And I think that's a little bit of what the posture did in church, where they were scared, they were overwhelmed. It was like, we just got to say no to everything, And it ended up creating a lot of shame. And the way I framed it this weekend was it positioned your body as a threat, even the way we talked about it. we would say things to young ladies like, "Hey, don't cause your brother to stumble," which is a biblical paradigm.
Yeah.
But like, you got to read the rest of the passage. It's still your
Yeah.
brother's responsibility
Yeah.
to understand that where his eyes go and what he does in his mind is his responsibility. So we can advocate for what modesty looks like for young ladies and young men, by the way, without becoming shame-inducing. How could you, making moral value statements, right? So I think all of that got layered into it. And then, we talked about the text from Paul where he says, flee sexual immorality, which is easy to go, oh, that seems kind of shame-inducing, but we miss the rest of the verse where Paul talks about the reason he's saying to escape this one, to run from this one, is because the consequences of sexual immorality are uniquely internal. Whereas every other sin I commit is out here, like lying, stealing, whatever. But sexual immorality I commit against my own person.
Yep.
And so recognizing like he's actually saying, no, I'm most concerned about you. I'm concerned about what this is going to do for you. And actually, I mean, brain science and sociology has caught up to what Paul has said, right? That when we live according to I'll just say like casual sexual ethic, personally, remove faith from the paradigm at all, it is not helping. It's making those secure attachments of how do I form long-term romantic relationships with someone. It's much more difficult for me to do that when in my head I'm running through the images that I've seen on a screen or past sexual partners or failed relationships. Those stack up against it. And I think that what happened was that happened for me. I grew up in the 90s and early 2000s. And I think what happened was the church went from that, and then it was like, oh no, I think we've gone too far. True love waits. I kiss dating goodbye. All the things.
Yep.
And then we went from that to like this strategic ambiguity space where basically it was like, hey, I think we did this wrong, so let's just not talk about it at all for a while.
Yeah. It's on you to figure out what
Yeah,
you should do
yeah.
or not.
And
But you
so-
know what you should do.
Right. And like that's exactly what it
Yeah.
was actually. That's a perfect description of what it was. It was like, hey, culture was still relatively tied enough to some idea of like mom, dad in the household, committed in marriage. Like, yeah, like that's still a culturally preferred version, and so we'll just kind of like let that be. But what we said this weekend, what we say all the time around here is everybody's always being formed. Like for sure, we're always, whether you're a Christian or not, you're being formed. And if you're a Christian, you're not necessarily being formed into the image of Jesus for you. A lot of times you're just being formed casually by the culture around you. And so then we went from purity culture to strategic ambiguity, which just led to permissive culture. And so the choice was either like, well, I'll go to those old fuddy-duddies that have made me feel bad, or I'll embrace a cultural vision of sex as a game. And it's from within sort of that primordial soup that I think we find ourselves in 2026 in the church, where you have a lot of people that grew up in the church. They remember sex as gross, so any sexual ethic can feel oppressive, or they didn't at all. They've never heard about this. It's the first sermon they've ever heard preached about it. And it feels like whiplash because sex as a game is the only paradigm they've ever seen.
Yes. It's interesting that unless you have been kind of taught these frameworks or ways to approach this, like you're just existing in the world that you're existing in.
Right.
And you're making sex, you're making relationships, you're making whatever that is, like some intersection of what you think they should be, what culture's telling you to be, and then if you are religious or Christian or whatever else, like that is inserted as well. And it can show itself in so many different ways. The analogy that we kind of used was wildfire versus fireplace.
Right.
And culture feels like that wildfire. It's explosive. It's in a way thrilling.
Right.
And then there's another version of this, which is fireplace. It's contained, it's warm, it's inviting, it's cozy. And so if we're feeling like attracted to this wildfire, how can we try to reorient ourselves to be more attracted to a version of a fireplace?
Yeah, I think it's always important to recognize that our lives will be a reflection of our diet. Now, that's true physically,
great.
right? That's true about the food that you eat today, how much energy you do or don't have, all that. One of our kids yesterday was really hungry after dinner, and so we got to have a conversation with them of like, hey, buddy, let's talk about the kinds of food you ate at dinner. Like, none of those are going to fill you up and keep you full. Yeah, they tasted good in the moment, but like you were going to get hungry again. And so I think that's not just true of food. I think that's true in general. You know, Philippians 4:8 is a great boundary setter, where Paul says, finally, whatever's true, whatever's honorable, whatever's lovely, whatever's praiseworthy, whatever's worthy of honor, focus on these things. And I think that a lot of times the things that we focus on in culture, especially in an attention economy, which is what we all live in, the things that we focus on in culture, we just assume, oh, that's like a cool, fun thing that people are looking at right now. So I guess that's why it's on my feed. No, it's on your feed because that company needs your attention so they can keep advertising things to you because that's how they make money. And so I think understanding that's the game that's being played. If you don't choose what's in front of you, someone else will choose what's in front of you. And the algorithms, for the most part, that are doing that are not doing it with your best interest in mind. We say that to our kids all the time. Like, the internet does not have your best interest in mind. Like, that is not its thing. It's not trying to do that. I'm not sure it by itself is trying to take you to like the deepest, darkest places of the world. You can trip there, but I think it's just kind of going, how do I keep your attention? How do I make money? Yeah. And so recognizing what does it look like for you if you're justifying that show that you know takes you to places that are unhealthy or unhelpful in your mind or heart, if you're justifying that music, if you're, and again, I don't think this is, hey, this Friday at Menlo, we're going to burn all of your Christian CDs. That's like purity culture 101 stuff, by the way, which you're like, what's a CD? Think like Spotify, but on circular discs.
Pick 12 of your favorite songs.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Or maybe 3 of your favorite songs and
then
4
like
that were okay.
100%, dude. Yeah. What's a playlist? So you can do a mixtape. That's a different conversation. Nice. But I do think that it's the same thing of like we had this whiplash where it became so oppressive, so like you can't look at any of it. And now the idea is, well, I'm strong enough and mature enough and stable enough. I can handle anything in culture. It doesn't affect me. And I would just say, like, really? Like, is that actually true? And then the other thing that I've always, like, it's kind of broken my heart, but I just try to keep a pulse on is look at the people in culture that epitomize culture's vision of the wildfire and look at their life. So that, like, Hollywood star that you think is amazing, that you're like, what a heartthrob, what a smoke show, whatever, like, how's their marriage doing? And then ask, like, which marriage is it? And how's their life? And I'm not saying that because I want you to, like, go glory over their failure. I'm just saying, like, they're living the consequences of the choices, and they're doing it with all the best resources available, all the financial resources, all the counseling resources, all the potential ways to sort of patch the holes of this broken worldview. You don't have that, and you think, well, if I follow the same pattern, I'm magically going to have a much better outcome. That doesn't make sense. Yeah. So I think some of it is diet and consumption. Some of it is look at the outcomes of the worldview, like, genuinely. And then I also think it doesn't take that much to go, hey, when I look at this just purely sociologically, remove faith from the conversation, what happens to the marriage rate of couples that live together first? And we know that it's a higher divorce rate. That, the couples that have the greatest sex life, self-reported, like, our experience of sex is amazing, are in committed, married relationships, period. The relationships that are most successful long-term in marriage are couples that didn't live together before they got married, didn't have sex before they got married, and had premarital counseling. If you're like, how can I make sure that my marriage is successful? I mean, I know that sounds crazy, but it's just like, hey, what God said he's going to bless, that's what we should do. And when he says don't, he really does mean don't hurt yourself. And yeah, that feels so countercultural, and I get it. And we all fall short, and we all come to this with stories and backgrounds and things we wish we could undo. I totally get it. But don't allow the choices of your past to predetermine the choices you assume you have to make in the present and future.
That's good. So, yeah. And so if someone's encountering this and is either feeling all sorts of ways, or maybe they're just like, hey, I've never thought about it this way, how does this understanding of sex as a gift, of if a fireplace cozy version of what love is, how does that actually deepen God's character, and how is that actually something worth pursuing? What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds so almost old-fashioned to talk about it in today's culture, but I hope you have somebody in your life that, well, they weren't perfect, modeled this, because I think when we see a relationship that's a loving couple that, by God's grace has been in relationship with one another for decades, you can just see that their love for one another has deepened over time. And there's like a trust and a safety that exists. And I think, the idea of love, when we use phrases like fall in love, right? Really, most of the time, what we're saying is fall in lust. Like what we're describing is an infatuation, and it doesn't mean that that's not valuable. Like that's actually how most romantic relationships start. But in a few months, I'll celebrate 20 years of marriage, which is
Congrats,
crazy.
bro.
I look it. Alyssa does not. That's, I mean, preferably, I guess, the way you want it to go, I suppose. But I would say if our relationship now was still, hey, I don't know much about you. Every time I see you, there's butterflies. Oh my gosh, you rattle me. That's cute for a movie. That's not helpful in a marriage. And I think that recognizing the long-term path that God has for you, you think about God's relationship to humanity, it's a long-term path. It's a covenant. It's a relationship that's unshakable. That's where we find ourselves fully known and fully loved. And I think in cohabitation relationships, in hookup culture, I think we want to disassociate, like we talked about this weekend, the physical activity from sex actual purpose. We make sex the ingredient. We make it the thing that we go, all right, if I have this and this and this and we're compatible, then maybe. But actually, biblically, it works the exact other way.
Yeah.
So all the other aspects of relational intimacy exist, and then sex becomes an outflow of a healthy relationship. And where I think we get in most trouble is when we ask sex to be the input, when we ask it to be the thing that's generative in our relationship, rather than recognizing, you know what, if that part of our relationship isn't working, it's because something else underneath it isn't working. And if I'm outside of a marriage relationship, when I realize that, well, I'm just going to bounce. Like, what's going to make me stick? But if I'm in a relationship, if I'm in a covenant relationship with someone else and with God, then we're going to work through it. Like, we're going to continue to press through. Hey, no matter what happens, we're going to continue to endure. We're going to figure this out. I know you've seen me on my best day. You've seen me on my worst day. You know all my weird, silly habits, and you love me anyway. I just think that is hopefully in a great marriage, imperfect as it is, it's the closest thing we get this side of eternity to the way that God loves us.
Yeah. And I was going to say that perspective of I can be who I am, the things that I've done, the things that I will do, the ways in which I'm proud and the ways in which I'm not. Like that's what this series is really all about.
Right.
And how does that identity that we hold on to as loved and as chosen, to be in relationship with a God that doesn't care about any of that. He just wants your heart.
Right.
That's really what all of our relationships, our self-identity, our sex lives, everything should be flowing out of. And
For sure.
that truest identity is the ingredient, or is that main piece.
Well, and when you put it that way, right, it can be so wild to think about this in a world where we have slowly sort of edited out God and slowly edited out our relationship as created beings from that God as our primary identity. And then you go, well, we just talked about how sex is an outflow of relationship. Yeah. But in our culture, sex and gender are the most important thing. They're the immutable traits of your personhood. And it's like, oh, that feels unsustainable. Yeah. That feels like you are putting so much pressure on those two aspects. And so as a staff, we read a book called The Truest Thing About You by David Lomas. And it was really, identity shaping. What does it mean to be followers of Jesus first? What does it mean to recognize the Imago Dei first? And those are other aspects of who you are important, but they can't be primary. And when we make them primary, they actually can't hold the weight of that much force of our identity.
That's good, man. Yeah. Well, I really appreciated the series.
Yeah, thanks, man.
It's been fun to try to dive into some of the parts that are weird to talk about in church, but the intersection of how everything comes back to, yes, who you are, who you're becoming, and the ways in which God is calling you to pursue Him first. Like that's going to be something that I've been thinking about for a while. So
yeah, I appreciate that. I think when we talk about different topics, and how regularly we could talk about things. This is one of those things that I just think like we are getting hammered
Yes.
in our culture with
Mm-hmm.
a competing worldview, and
Mm-hmm.
so regularly trying to find creative ways like a diamond to come at this from
Yep.
a different angle, see
Mm-hmm.
different facets of it. I hope it's helpful, and
Yeah.
we did our marriage course signups
Yep. Yep. Yep.
along the same time. As we've been doing this series, last I heard, we have 87 couples that are
It's
signed up for
incredible,
that
man.
marriage course, which is amazing. To just help people hopefully put handles to what
Yeah.
they're learning and say, okay, how do we learn the skills of communication? How do
Yep.
we break some of the bad habits and patterns that have slipped into our relationship over time?
Mm-hmm.
So, really grateful for that. Really hopeful for what God does with it. And yeah, I mean, I'm glad this isn't every week that I preach this
Yeah.
message, but I'm glad to be able to this week.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's cool to see the different ways that where love, like what love is, and I mean, just speaking about love, man. I've loved doing this podcast.
Thanks, dude.
Like a big part of, yeah, just I'm not shy to say that this has always been one of the highlights of my week, if not the highlight of my week, and um, yeah, following God and the things in which He is calling us to and to become. That's a big reason of why I'm kind of stepping out of Menlo and stepping into something new, and it feels weird and hard, but at the same time, I feel really encouraged and I feel really loved in this process. And um, yeah, it's just a weird thing to think like this is the last thing that we get to do for now. I don't know. I could come back. I'll
Yeah,
come back
maybe.
anytime, man.
Who knows? Yeah,
You
of
let me know.
course. Yeah. Now, for somebody that's like, "What? Mark's leaving? What's
Yeah.
going on?"
Hmm.
Catch them up.
Yeah. So we've announced over the last couple weeks or so me transitioning off of our staff at the end of this week and transitioning onto a staff that's a part of our church network. They're called Peninsula Covenant Church in Redwood City to be a creative and comms director there, which, yeah, for me and my journey, a lot of people know that I don't have a big plan for my life aside from say yes to where I think God is taking me. And that's kind of where I've gotten, or why I've gotten to where I've gotten now.
Yeah.
And so I think this is just the next step up in that. And it feels like a really great step. It's growing and stretching in a lot of ways. I get to sit on their leadership team, which is probably the biggest and scariest part of the transition. I know that I've done similar fashions or I'm doing similar fashions of all the work and the tasks now. But that
Yeah.
leadership piece is like, oh, that's going to be really fun.
That's another job, just so you know.
I know.
That's like a new job on top of the other
Yeah.
job. Yep.
Uh-huh.
That's great, man. I'm
Mm-hmm.
I'm super proud of you and pumped that you'll get to take this step. And
Me
I mean,
too.
I think that the last, you and I have been together for a little over 3 years,
Mm-hmm.
but you've been at this longer than that around Menlo and
Yep.
doing a bunch of work. And I think the podcast has been a really important part, especially for Menlo over the course of like 18 months of
Yeah.
not meeting in person.
Mm-hmm.
You really were the person
Mm-hmm.
that guided them in the way they thought about stuff and the way they approached how Menlo was thinking about or
Yeah.
presenting content. I wonder for you as you think about like all the way back to then.
Mm-hmm.
What do you feel like was the core dream of
Yeah.
what you wanted to do with the podcast, and how has that
Yeah.
evolved over the course of these years?
Yeah, I think that it took a lot of different steps to get to where it is now, but I really am loving the version of what it has become. There are big dreams of like I want to create like like world class resourcing around different topics or
Mm,
subjects or this or that, but really I think God helped shape my heart to see like the way that like Menlo is very good about being pretty clear about what we are, our stances, what we believe, how to access those. And so the knowledge of what we are is there, but I kind of wanted to give life and personality to that knowledge. And I
yeah.
feel like this space is where a lot of the ideas that we're talking about on Sunday can come to life in fresh ways for people. And so that intersection with just trying to pull out a story or to craft thinking about an idea or a concept in a different way as our brains all interface with the sermon differently or a story differently. Um, and then just giving voices to people that, I mean, our staff is so great. The people in our congregation are so great. Our network is so great. And so giving space to people to just in a relaxed environment, as relaxed as it can be with lights and cameras on,
Hmm.
feel like they can just come in and have a conversation like they would have a conversation in their living room And hopefully that being modeled by people that are watching this, that was really the dream, and it kind of came to life, which
Yeah.
I'm stoked about.
Oh, that's great, dude. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I think you've heard this a lot, but it really you put people at ease. You're very good at this,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that has helped move the needle a lot in what these conversations look like.
Yep.
And it's always been helpful for me to like have this second crack at a
Yeah.
conversation,
Yep.
which is what it really becomes.
Mm-hmm.
If there's something that was on the clipping room floor, but I'm like, oh, I wish I could have included that, or
Mm-hmm.
what's the next layer of the conversation, or
Yep.
even today, like we can have conversations about stuff because I preached a message about sex to a room with kids in it, and so like
Right.
that, I'm not going to talk about
Yes.
pornography or
Mm-hmm.
50 years of history in which we loosened the bonds between commitment and sexuality in America. Like that stuff doesn't make sense there, but here it does,
Mm-hmm.
and for the people that have found value in that, it's so helpful. Or even, we did a podcast a few weeks ago, sort of at the peak of the crisis in
Oh yeah.
Minneapolis, and being able to pivot like that without having it to be like with no context, with a few minutes in a service. Like
Mm-hmm.
I've always really appreciated that, and
Yeah.
I think that the masterful way that you've hosted those moments and even segued, I mean, there's nobody that's going to match that. But I wonder what has been like the toughest part of constructing or hosting that
Mm-hmm.
you're like, you know what, I'm kind of glad I'm not going to have to juggle that
Yeah.
in the next little season. Although I'm sure you're going to do a podcast there, but
Mm-hmm. Probably.
what have been the toughest parts of that for you?
It's hard to say tough because this was always a get to for me.
Hmm.
Even the toughest parts were like, cool, I get to solve that. Um, I would think that the answer is kind of twofold. One of that is the technical side,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
trying to get it to a place. I'm still not proud where it is now. I think it could be a lot
Hmm.
better technically, like cameras, lighting, all that kind of
Sure.
stuff. But then from the prep and the conversation side, I think finding a way to keep a conversation that could be the same 10 or so rotation of questions fresh and interesting,
Right.
um, and engaging for someone to listen to and continue to listen to. So whether that, and a lot of that came down to prep work, but a lot of it too is just trying to lean into the ways in which I feel like God wants me to pivot away from my notes
Yeah, yeah.
to ask something different. And so I would always try to come prepared with questions and stuff based off of
Mhm.
messaging or themes, but trying to figure out and link different concepts or ideas in a way that made sense was like a skill that I kind of had to learn.
Sure.
And then trying to not be too rigid in that skill that I built to be able to say, maybe I should pivot away from that and not get to the next scripted question that I have,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
to then lean into, oh, I feel like Phil really wants to, or there's something more behind that for Phil or
Right.
for whoever else was there, and to try to offer that opportunity.
And that does feel like a little bit of a tension, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not quite just a free form conversation because that could get chaotic quick.
Mm-hmm.
It also can't be like the most um, structured. All right,
Yeah.
you have 3 minutes and a buzzer is going to go
Right.
off. It is like this weird.
Yep.
We
What?
want it to feel like a conversation, but
Right.
it's going to have some bumps along the road.
Yeah.
That's good. You've managed that well, man.
Thanks.
I wonder if you get 6 months down the road
Mm-hmm.
and you're at PCC and you're kind of thinking about things in hindsight.
Yep.
What do you think are going to be like the lessons, the gifts, or the experiences you will have most appreciated that will carry you into what's next?
Yeah. I think there's been a few different seasons at Menlo in which I've been called and tasked to do different things. And I've been able to serve under some amazing leaders. And I've been, being able to serve alongside all different kinds of teams, whether that was a team that I was leading, a team that I'm a part of centrally on a campus. And so I think that there's just like, as I was imagining myself doing this role somewhere else, being like, okay, I've done a part of that 5 years ago when I was on this team.
Yeah,
Or,
yeah.
okay, yeah, I have done, I've intersected with this part. And so I think that the thing that I appreciate most is just the way that Menlo has been gracious to allow me to try different things and to experiment with, can I do this? There's been ways in which leaders have seen things in me which I didn't necessarily see in myself at the time or wasn't given the opportunity to do so, and say, okay, we want you to run with this and try to make it great. And it's okay if you fail, but we know that you can do it, and we'll know that we'll learn in the process. And so I think both the lessons from that and the perspective as a leader to then be able to trust people to do that and enter into that process for themselves.
Yeah.
I've seen ways in which it's felt really great, and I want to try to emulate that.
Yeah, and I think that's I think that's a tension in a growing church context because you're, as like a staff member, you're the one that like this is going to be on your performance review. Like this is,
Yes.
you feel the unique level of accountability to whatever the thing is, and the right way to pastor is, and I'm still going to invest in people that there's going to be glitches, there's going to be hiccups, there's going to be learning curves, but that's not like the stuff we deal with to do ministry. That is itself ministry.
Yeah.
And I think just learning and growing into how do I see the people work as the work. And it's not just like the product that we create together. It's not just the content that we export. It's who are the people that are being shaped. I think that is one of those things that even now, decades into ministry, I still feel a temptation to go, oh, I'm going to go,
Yeah.
I can do that faster. I can do that better. But that's actually not the call of God on my life to pastor people. And so trying to always live in that tension, I think is important, man.
Yeah.
It's good. If you had to give, Menlo Church listening now, this is the last time they're going to hear from you. I'm sure we'll have you back and guest
we'll do
host and
something.
stuff. But
Yeah.
if you were to just kind of go, hey, Menlo, here's an encouragement that Mark Morinishi wants to give you after prayer requests via text message, after sitting and praying with them each week with an online team, after responding to emails, after putting content out. What's the thing you go, man, this is my hope, this is my prayer for you, Menlo Church, right now?
My hope and my prayer would be that people would stay curious and stay curious enough to reach out to ask questions, to receive encouragement, to say, hey, I'm struggling with this, to say, I've got this thing in my life with this person that I know and I need help with. Like, those were always the ways where I would feel like the most, oh, God has me here for this.
Yeah.
Like, this podcast is a means to sure distribute information, culture, feelings, whatever else. But some of the requests that would come in and the relationships that we've made with people that are on this online team that wants to and volunteers their time to make people feel welcome, to pray for people, to receive prayer requests and help get people to the help or whatever else they need. Like, that's just been such the gift. And so for people that are listening, like, you have amazing resources here, both online and in person, to people that want the best for you, that want the best for your family, want the best for the people that are in your life. And the more that you can say, hey, like, I want the best for me too. I don't know what that looks like, but I'm willing to have a conversation to figure out what that can be or what that is. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good word, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that the legacy that I hope you leave is that genuine heart for, man, like, you don't know what you have access to or you don't have access to unless you ask. And I think online has continued to be the easiest, safest, and fastest way for people to ask. And that's not going it's not going anywhere. We'll kind of share future implications of podcast stuff in the future. But I got a chance to be at the church that we were at in Colorado last weekend. Not a couple days
Super
ago, like 10 days ago,
weekend,
Super Bowl weekend. And it was really fun. There were lots of really cool parts about it. But, really, there's a part of me that's just like, man, thank the Lord that those years were not wasted. That, like, they're doing their own thing. They have great leadership there. They're figuring it out. But I can see that what God did while we were there and what he was doing in the team while I was there, that stuff was important and necessary. And what they're doing now is built on top of it. And that's going to be true here, man. So I just want to say thank you. We're proud of you. We love you. Cheering you on. I'm sure that there'll be emails and coffees and stuff, especially that leadership team side stuff where you're going to be like, Phil, this is really hard and kind of sucks. And I'll be like, yeah, like, it's true. Let's get some more coffee. So, yeah, I mean, I'm stoked for you. I think it's going to be a great next step, and got a lot of people cheering you on here at Menlo, and this is always going to be a family to you, man. So
definitely.
come back anytime.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone. If you need any prayer encouragement this week or ever, text our team at 650-600-0402. We love you all. Have a great week. See you soon.
God bless you.